I shall now request Bulbul-e-Hind, the Nightingale of India, to address us not in prose but in poetry.
Mr. Chairman, the manner of your calling me is not constitutional, it is poetic. It reminds me of some lines of a Kashmiri poet who said, Bulbul ko gul mubarak, gul ko chaman mubarak, rangeen tabiyaton ko range sukhan mubarak.
Hyderabad, in the last quarter of the 19th century, ruled by the 6th Nizam, Mehboob Ali Khan, was a big, bustling city, 4th largest in the Indian Empire. Merchants came here from abroad to buy hides and gems, and iron to fashion the sharp blades of Damascus. The Nizam's court retained all the splendor of the stories of the Arabian Nights. Huge chandeliers hung from the ceilings, and thick silk was everywhere, on the walls, windows, and Louis XIV chairs. Here, on the 13th of February, 1879, Sarojini, the eldest of the 8 children of Dr. Aghornath Chattopadhyaya and Varada Sundari, was born. Dr. Aghornath Chattopadhyaya was a distinguished scholar and a brilliant scientist who received his doctorate from Edinburgh University in 1877. He founded the Nizam's College in Hyderabad and was its first principal. Of his father, Harindranath Chattopadhyaya, the youngest son, said,
Almost, but I think the greatest thing about him was a tenderness towards humanity, and all humanity seemed to have been rolled up in one inside him. Rabindranath Tagore once, traveling with him, he met him on the train, and he wrote in his Hungry Stones about my father. I didn't know it was about my father. I had read the Hungry Stones earlier. Said, do you know the man in the train whom I've mentioned as being most important for the dispenser of all things? I said, no, I certainly don't. He said, that is your father. Oh, God, I said, what a wonderful description of father.
Varada Sundari was a poetess and a singer.
And she used to sing like a bird. It was a cross between a bird and a flute, that voice of hers. And whenever she sang, tears rolled down her cheeks. And I said, Mother, why are you crying? I'm not crying, dear. I'm not crying. I'm singing. Yes, that is the way song should be sung.
Aghornath taught his eldest daughter to be widely interested in many things. In 1891, in her 12th year, Sarojini passed her matriculation examination, coming first in the Madras presidency. She showed early promise as a poet.
Well, at a very early age, she wrote poetry. Well, she wrote verse, really, to start with, but it was a kind of a raw effort. But the rawness was full of the promise of a ripeness. Now, I'd like to give you an example of what she wrote when she was 14 years old. My birthday, oh, this day, I am 14. Childhood's years and golden wings have fled. Right many a grateful blessing have I seen. Purest joys on me their lustre shed, as flew those years over my happy head. My joys were not what joys to childhood seem. Not on unthinking sports my soul was fed, but nursed it was on many a brighter theme, lofty high ideas formed my radiant dream. Now you see how distinctly full of promise this poem is.
Sarojini was 16 when she sailed for England in 1895 to study first at King's College London and later at Girton College, Cambridge. Her professors noticed that she was not the usual type of student. A voracious reader, she spent much of her time observing and admiring nature. It was during this time that she met her future publisher, William Heinemann, and the two literary critics, Edmund Goss and Arthur Symonds. Symonds considered her an infant prodigy. Sarojini was a frequent visitor to the Goss family. When she gave him some of her poems to read, the great literary critic was impressed by her mastery of the English language, but equally dismayed to find in her work traces of Tennyson and Shelley. He beseeched Sarojini not to write of English robins and skylarks, but to be a genuine Indian poet of the Deccan. Towards the end of her stay in England, her health broke down. But she was determined to conquer the sorrow of life with the sorrow of song. Sarojini returned to India in September 1898 and married Dr. Govindarajulu Naidu in December the same year. A unique event which laid the foundations of intercaste, interprovincial marriages. The Golden Threshold was the home of the newlyweds. It became the hub of much of Hyderabad's intellectual life. Hyderabad. Sarojini adored it for its delicate blend of Hindu-Islamic culture. Its graceful living, its cosmopolitan milieu. The young poet was already dreaming of a secular India. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. From mosque and minar the muezzins are calling. Pour forth your praises, O chosen of Islam. Swiftly the shadows of sunset are falling. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ave Maria, Ave Maria. Devoutly the priests at the altars are singing. O ye who worship the Son of the Virgin, kneel soft at your prayers, for the vespers are ringing. Ave Maria, Ave Maria. Ahura Mazda, Ahura Mazda. How the sonorous Avesta is flowing. Ye who to flame and the light make obeisance, bend low where the quenchless blue torches are glowing. Ahura Mazda, Ahura Mazda. Narayan, Narayan, hark to the ageless divine invocation. Lift up your hands, O ye children of Brahma. Lift up your voices in rapt adoration. Narayan, Narayan. The publication of The Golden Threshold in 1905 by William Heinemann in England created quite a stir, and the book was soon sold out. This was followed by 2 more volumes, both equally well acclaimed. Rabindranath Tagore wrote to Sarojini, "Your poems in The Broken Wing seem to be made of tears and fire, like clouds of a July evening, glowing with the muffled passion of sunset." From the romantic lyricism of her early years, Sarojini Naidu had moved into a period of passionate involvement with the freedom struggle, and the man most responsible for it was Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Behold, I rise to meet the destined spring, and scale the stars upon my broken wing. It was Gokhale who introduced Sarojini Naidu to Gandhiji in London in 1914. She immediately came under the spell of the little man whom she looked upon as a crusader. She joined the band of crusaders and became their bard and minstrel. Alongside the national struggle, the women's movement had also forged ahead. On the 15th of December 1917, Sarojini Naidu led a deputation of women to meet Edwin Montagu, the Secretary of State for India. Montagu's diary for that day makes piquant reading. The deputation was led by Mrs. Naidu, a very attractive and clever woman, but I believe a revolutionary at heart. The massacre at Jallianwala Bagh stunned a whole nation. Addressing a gathering in London in 1920, Sarojini told her British audience, "No nation that rules by tyranny is free. It is the slave of its own despotism." Oppression again took her to South Africa, where Indians were harshly treated and suffered racial discrimination. Wherever she went, she was greeted by tumultuous crowds. Her speeches electrified audiences. Back in India, Gandhiji proposed her name for the presidency of the Congress at the Kanpur session in October 1925. Addressing the session, she said, "I who have rocked the cradle, I who have sung soft lullabies, am now to kindle the flame of liberty." She told an enthralled audience, "In the battle of liberty, fear is one unforgivable treachery, and despair the one unforgivable sin." Her eloquence gained worldwide acclaim. To the New York Times, she was a Joan of Arc who rose to inspire India. Sarojini arrived in New York in the autumn of 1928 as an emissary of Gandhi and immediately set out on a whirlwind lecture tour of the New World to explain to Americans the ideals and aspirations of the Indian people. The Americans hailed her as a jewel from the East. When the wandering singer returned home, Gandhiji was preparing for his memorable march to Dandi to break the salt law. After Gandhiji and Abbas Tayyibji were arrested, the leadership of the movement fell to Sarojini Naidu. She said, "We ask no quarter, and we shall give none. I shall cut the barbed wire with pliers and seize the salt with my own hands." As the movement spread, so did the repression. Hundreds died, and 60,000 were jailed. Sarojini Naidu was lodged in the Yerawada jail. After the Gandhi-Irwin Pact, Gandhiji, along with Sarojini, sailed for London on August the 29th, 1931, to attend the second Roundtable Conference. The conference failed. "I have never attended anything more disappointing and dull in every way," remarked Sarojini. On her return, she was again arrested in Bombay, but soon released because of her precarious health. United with her family in Hyderabad, she was drawn into the social and cultural life of her hometown. It was during this time that Tagore came there, and the two friends met again. Back in the fray, Sarojini Naidu threw herself zealously into the feminist movement, urging women to participate in the romance and adventure of Swadeshi. Meanwhile, Hitler's hordes had overrun Europe. And the failure of the Crips mission led to the last decisive phase of India's struggle for independence. On the 9th of August, all the national leaders were arrested. During the long prison term, Sarojini was indomitable. Not even Bapu had realized up to this time the full richness of her nature. Sarojini's health broke down and was unconditionally released. The war had ended in Europe, and the Labour government resumed talks with Indian national leaders. Hindu-Muslim riots broke out throughout the country. Gandhiji set out on a pilgrimage to Noakhali. From Shantiniketan, Sarojini sent her affirmation of love and faith to the beloved pilgrim. Her election as the president of the Asian Relations Conference was another milestone in her political life. The conference was held in the historic Purana Killa in New Delhi. It was an unprecedented gathering, and Sarojini Naidu rose to the occasion with her usual brilliance.
India is not a civilization of one unit. India today is not Hindu India, because the stream that came from Western Asia, the stream that came with all its gifts from the Arab world, the great democratic ideals that came in the wake of the Arab traders to India, all those influenced the introspective philosophy, and by learning from us, taught us great ideals of brotherhood.
The 15th of August, 1947, India's Independence Day. Sarojini Naidu was sworn in as the governor of Uttar Pradesh. As governor, Sarojini Naidu was constantly on the move, urging people to guard against the communal virus and to build a new India. She was most inspired when she spoke to the youth of the country. I, who have loved you all my life, and the older I grow, the more faith I have that the young people of the world will fulfill my dreams, my unfulfilled dreams. Sarojini Naidu was nearing 70, but her mind still retained the vigor and effervescence of her early years. On March the 2nd, 1949, Sarojini Naidu breathed her last. A whole nation was steeped in grief at the death of a beloved daughter. Mourning her death, Jawaharlal Nehru.
Here was a person of great brilliance. Here was a person vital and vivid. Here was a person with so many gifts, but above all, some gifts which made her perfectly unique. She began life as a poet. In later years, when the compulsion of events drew her into the national struggle, and she threw herself in it with all the zest and fire that she possessed, she did not write much poetry with pen and paper, but her whole life became a poem's song.
Sarojini Naidu was fond of recalling her father's words. There is no birth and there is no death. There is only the spirit seeking evolution in higher and higher stages of life.